So we just wrapped an amazing first day of Survivor School. I'm here with Dr. Philip Castle, Phil, and his presentation was just amazing. There are a couple things to really take home that stand out to me. Number one, we get so many women who say, this is probably a stupid question, but I don't want to answer it, but I want to know. He said there are no bad questions. The only bad question is the one you're not asking. So always ask the questions of your doctors, of anybody. Stacking bodies in Africa. Let people die with dignity, because we have to talk about death. We want to make sure that people aren't dying of this disease, but they are.
They are. And, in some cases, they're dying, but they're dying in pain. Mm-hmm. And so even when we can provide morphine to people who, can't be helped by treatment, allowing them to die with dignity is at the very least we can do. Of course, what we really want to do is prevent all of this, and that's what we talked about today.
Talk about screening. No follow-up is a waste of time.
Right.
I think that hit home to a lot of people because I was following the Survivor School hashtag, and it seemed like a lot of people were retweeting that.
Well, it's not just a waste of time, it's a waste of money, okay? Because screening is not the whole process. Screening is a program. You have to screen, you have to follow up with the positives. If you're going to do a diagnostic step, you have to finish that. And then the women who need to be treated. So if you just do the screening, you're only doing part of it, and you're not really doing the part that prevents cancer.
In working and doing this for some time and really getting it, the first time I heard it, it really resonated with me. This group of women here at Survivor School, we really could be the last generation of survivors if people do what needs to be done. Right.
There's no real reason, at the very least, cervical cancer in our lifetime should become a rare cancer globally. We have these incredible, just unheard of tools. When you think about other vaccines and you talk about 40 or 50 or 60% effective, these vaccines are 99% effective.
That's big.
That's like mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Even if you got a dose to everybody immediately, that would be the end of HPV, because you would just obliterate it. So we have great screening. We have even better screening than the previous generation with HPV testing. And we have these great vaccines. There really is no excuse. We can save lives now, and we can prevent it in the future.
Speaking about saving lives, HPV is an equal opportunity killer. It doesn't discriminate.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. First of all, there's been no evidence that there's a genetic predisposition. It's not like African Americans are more susceptible than white Americans or Africans or Europeans or whatever. So basically, it's really the difference. The reason why, let's say, women in Africa have a lot of cervical cancer is just because they don't have access.
Right.
Now, Africa is a little bit complicated because they have HIV too, which is also a problem related to cervical cancer. But the main point is that if we had good access to vaccine and screening in Africa, Africa would look like the United States.
Screening. You just said the key word. There's new guidelines. Some people, they don't like change. They don't want to hear it. And, PAP has always been around. That's what we know. PAP, 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 PAP. Pap smears are not as accurate. So in simple terms, to women who need to schedule, their well woman exam, and they're thinking, I gotta go get my PAP, I gotta go get my pelvic exam. Make our viewers understand exactly what these new guidelines in simple terms mean.
So you have three choices now. There's new guidelines that just came out. Get PAP every 3 years. Probably a little bit better is to get HPV every 3 years, or get co-testing, which is PAP and HPV, every 5 years. The point is to get it done. I don't, you pick one, pick one of them, but be sure to pick one, right? And the problem is that, as we talk about a lot in Survivor School, is that women put it off, or they're not insured or whatever, and so they don't get their screening, they don't get their follow-up, and that's where those cancers come from.
Yeah, and I think I know, I watched the room, the faces in the room, when you showed your slide in your presentation, the mortality map.
Well, we live in this rich country, but the fact is that we have women living in Mississippi and along the Atlantic seaboard, even in Washington, D.C., our capital, that experience an excess of cervical cancer. I mean, how can we justify that? How is that even appropriate? I mean, it's unethical. I mean, it's downright unethical that these women in the richest country in the world don't get access to services.
Yeah, yeah. And we have to work together to change that.
And these are also the same populations that are getting less HPV vaccine too. So that disparity, is bad now. This difference between the haves and the have-nots, even within the United States, will start to become even greater.
Now, okay, you mentioned vaccine, so let's go ahead, let's get into it. Let's talk about the vaccine. You guys are tweeting, you're Facebook messaging, you're putting it on our wall. You just don't trust the vaccine. You think it's not safe. You think that it has the virus inside it. It's going to give you cervical cancer, and you say...
Wrong.
Okay, why?
There's literally been over 100 million doses of this vaccine, and they find no evidence that it's a safety risk. But what is a risk is cervical cancer. That's a risk. That's a real risk. And I think we have an obligation to try to get our daughters and our sons vaccinated, because we really, in 20 years, could see the end of cervical cancer.
You kind of looked around the room and you noticed that there were a lot of young faces, and I feel like you had a moment. And what did you think seeing all of these young women who've gone through cervical cancer disease?
Well, first of all, it's a travesty, and it's tragic. It breaks my heart, and now even more so. I mean, I'd hate to be coming back to Survivor school 20 years from now and seeing those same people here, because, or not the same people, but
doing the same thing.
Doing the same thing, because now there really is no excuse. This should be, as we said, the last generation of survivors. There's really no excuse.
There's no excuse.
There is no excuse.
Last generation of survivors. No excuse. Dr. Philip Castle, Survivor TV. See you next time.